lies or deceives to exploit others, is callous, cynical, and disrespectful of others, uses charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or personal pleasure, is extremely opinionated, has recurring problems with the law, including criminal behavior, repeatedly violates the rights of others through intimidation and dishonesty, lacks empathy for others or remorse for harming others, and lastly, fails to consider the negative consequences of behaviors or to learn from them. So those are cluster B, and then that is the narcissist.
Hey everyone, my name is Tyler King and this is my co-host Karen Maldonado, and this is Narcissist. I am asking for a friend podcast. And we have, such a great topic, another good book that we want to go over and help you to understand narcissistic relationships. So we just want to let you know that it's upfront. We're not a narcissist bashing podcast. So all we want to do is help you to, understand maybe where that narcissist is coming from, maybe how they got that way. And if you're in a relationship with them, how to navigate those challenging times that you may have with them. I want to make sure that, we always approach this from a Christian perspective. So you have a great book that we're going to go over, and I want you to go ahead and talk to us about it.
Yeah, toxic family members. And so as I read that title, I'm sure that there are some people out in the audience that right away had a picture of someone in their
right.
that might be that magical person that
right. Yes.
So, yes, but we probably all know somebody, whether they're a family member or a neighbor or somebody we know out there. We've seen them in action, and so our hearts can go out to their people that are closest to them, because then maybe make it a little bit difficult for them to do life. But I just want to read a few excerpts from this, and then we'll discuss what I read. So
perfect.
I'm actually reading from the foreword. This foreword is from Wendy T. Bahari. She's the author of the international best-selling book, Disarming the Narcissist.
Okay.
And again, Adult Survivors of Toxic Family Members is the book I'm quoting from. And this is Sherry Campbell. She's a PhD. As part of the survival system, you may find yourself at times shifting into maladaptive patterns of self-doubt and self-sacrifice, forfeiting your needs, muting your joy, losing your grip on an otherwise sturdy internal self-advocate, weakening your confidence, and compromising your most authentic voice. That while strife and disagreement are part of human interactions, we must employ critical discernment between typical negotiable conflicts and unsustainable toxic relationships where boundary setting is mandatory for emotional health and well-being. So, which is basically saying there is that, we cannot think that every time that, we might have a disagreement with someone, maybe we're married to, whatever, that person's a narcissist. Not everybody is a narcissist.
Right.
So we need discernment to know, is this a typical negotiable conflict where, there's two people that need to talk it out, and then they need to come to some type of a compromise or understanding and maybe validate each other? Or are we talking about a person that is so difficult that they can never empathize, they can never come to any kind of compromise, and it's always got to be their way? So, it takes discernment to know what you're dealing with, if it's, just a very toxic person, or if it's just, we're two different human beings, we have two different opinions on things, and because of that, we're going to sometimes have a conflict, and that's totally normal. There's no marriage, no family relationship where it's conflict free, because
Right.
we're two different people, right? So
and I love that they were talking about the patterns of self-doubt and the sacrifices that you're having to make. Like, what are some sacrifices that the person's having to make? Like, I would say for me, I was in a relationship that was really toxic, narcissistic type person, and it was just always what they wanted to do. So if it was something like maybe I had an interest in going to a theater or something like that, but then they may have wanted to go to a football game or do something like that, and it was always kind of like belittling if I wanted to go dancing, like, oh, like, what do you want to do that for? Or what's that about? That's stupid. It's like, so it's like I almost always had to either not do the things I wanted to do, or if I wanted to do certain things, it was like I had to go through this whole grief and this yelling and this arguing and this whole, so now you're going out and you don't even feel that great about it because this person just kind of really upset you and trying to make you feel like, this isn't, I'm going to make this unenjoyable for you. Even if you go, I'm going to make sure that you're so upset that even when you're out there, you still can't enjoy yourself. So what are some of the other sacrifices that you've seen in your practice that other people have had to make, or just maybe the self-doubt, if you can speak to that?
Mm-hmm. I think the self-doubt is a big one because in a true toxic relationship, that person wants you to doubt yourself. They want you to think that your ideas are crazy. Wanting to go dance, that's crazy. So,
Right.
the whole thing is then you really lose if you go along with everything that they say and they dictate, then you do lose a sense of your own identity because now the things that are your likes and dislikes are not considered even normal thinking, right? Now you're crazy, they make you feel foolish for having certain likes and dislikes. And if you don't adhere to what they like, then, and then they'll say things like, you're being so unreasonable, you never go along with what I want. Why do you always have to give me a hard time? And it's like, do I always give them a hard time when
Mm.
so it's almost like, is there truth to that? That self-doubt, and then you get beat down like that enough, then you start to believe that what they're saying to you must be you must be the problem. You're fighting every week, maybe, or every day even, and you must be the problem because, they're telling you you are. And then the other thing that can happen too is because they can be very charismatic and convincing
Right.
other people, that you see that they have a lot of friends and
Mhm.
they seem to be liked by other people. So that in itself can cause self-doubt too, because the outsiders don't know what that person's like inside, right? So you're just looking at their opinion of him or her, and theirs seems to be pretty good. So there's your self-doubt right there now, because it's like, wow, they're accepted by everybody. So I must be the person that's wrong.
They kind of just always have you maybe in a state of confusion.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
confusion is a big one. A lot of times the main argument that you started is not the one that you're ending up with. It oftentimes gets switched. Like you might say, well, how come we never do what I want to do? We always choose what you want to do. And then because now they're going to regress into, if it's a narcissist, they're going to regress into childlike behavior and,
Ah.
and have a tantrum because they're not getting what they want.
Mm.
Putting a boundary up because you want to do something that you enjoy doing, and well, how come you never go along with something that I want to do? I always, always make me feel foolish for wanting that. Now you're trying to have that inner voice that they talk about that you'll lose. And so here it says, in compromising your most authentic voice. Your most authentic voice is saying, I want to go dancing, or I want to go do this. And they won't do it with you. So now you're trying to do it, but then you get lectured, or they go into this narcissistic rage, which is an adult tantrum.
Right.
Now they train you to never question what they say, because if you do, you're going to have to deal with this rage, or you're going to have to deal with an hour-long lecture.
Right.
There's like there's control here that they're trying to gain over you, and so you will compromise your most authentic voice because trying to be a peacemaker. You want peace. You don't want all this drama.
Right.
They thrive on drama.
So while you're trying to keep peace, they're trying to create drama. So there's never really, there's no way for there to be any compromise there because you want it to be peaceful. They want it to be a dramatic, like, theater type of everything is always a show.
Right.
So what can a person do in that respect? If you really love this person, what can they do to either figure out if they want to continue on with this, or that they really need to find their authentic voice and stop compromising and really start walking into their true self.
Right.
What do you suggest?
Well, I do believe that they need to start making choices to do things without that person. So, if this person does not want to go dancing with them, or let's say they like the theater and this person wants to go to ball games, or then you need to find people that you can go and do that with. Now, that's the problem though with narcissists. If they control the pocketbook, then they don't let you use money. Just a lot of times that happens. They've got such tight reins on the finances that they know every expenditure that happens. And so because of that, but if it gets that bad where you have you're being treated, I'd say, worse than a child, really.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I agree.
So because of that, if it gets to that point, then you're really in a situation where you need outside help. You need, counseling.
Yes.
Or in the worst cases, a lawyer. You need situations where your voice can be heard. And, if you're so squashed and you're not allowed to have an opinion or a like or a dislike, then it gets to the point where it is abusive. Abuse can be passive,
Right. It almost sounds like you're a prisoner.
Yeah, he may not be, or she may not be hitting you, although they're doing that too. But if she or he is not allowing you to be the person that you need to be, and I'm talking about being a reasonable person. I'm not saying that if your like is to go out with your friends every night and not spend time with them, then you might be the narcissist.
Right.
Exactly. I'm talking about if you're the, person that's, there for them most of the time, but now you want to do something a little bit different and they're not interested in that. Well, they don't need to be shaming you. You should be able to have something that you enjoy doing without them. There could be an outlet outside of your relationship with them that includes, other people and enjoyment, and it doesn't have to include them all the time. That's a healthy relationship,
That is healthy, because if you're not able to do anything outside of them, that's already a sign right there that, hey,
you're isolated.
You're isolated. They're able to control you. You don't have a lot of options. You're being cut off from being able to establish and to cultivate and to nurture relationships outside of this person, which ultimately I think in the end makes it harder if you are like trying to leave, or you see that, okay, I don't like how this is going and I want to kind of move on. So I guess one of the things is, I know you mentioned that not everyone is a narcissist. So I think we just touched on it right there. Like, if they don't allow you to have other friends, that could be a sign right there.
Right, and I have a list here that is in this book.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah. So Sherry Campbell happens to be on page 11 in the book, defining traits of toxic people. So here's a list of some traits that would be helpful. Just to see, is this something that you're dealing with? It's likely several of the following traits describe the individual. This falls under actually not just narcissist, but cluster B personality disorders, which is in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM-5, that we use as a diagnostic tool. So, but cluster B includes narcissist. It also includes borderline, and it includes histrionic and antisocial personality disorder. So those 4 disorders fall inside of the cluster B. So the ones that I see mostly, or I've seen mostly in my own practice, are the narcissists, borderlines, and histrionic.
Okay.
Yes. So I have not seen many antisocial, because a large portion of my practice has been marriage, and antisocial usually don't marry or don't last very long in a marriage. So they're You
I
know,
was about to say that's kind of extreme. Like
yeah, they're extreme. Yeah. So, but let me continue with this list, and then our
Mhm.
listeners can see if they're dealing with any of this.
Okay.
They're uncomfortable unless they are the center of attention. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that if you have a spouse or a child or a person that you're thinking about that likes to be the center of attention, that doesn't mean that they fall under cluster B just because they do that. They have to have a lot of other things that they do. Displays rapidly shifting emotions, very dramatically, is overly concerned with physical appearance, constantly seeks reassurance or approval, excessively sensitive to criticism or disapproval, has a low tolerance for frustration, makes rash decisions, has difficulty maintaining relationships, often seeming fake or shallow, threatens or attempts suicide to get attention, exaggerates achievements and talents, believes they are superior, monopolizes conversations, expects special favors and unquestioning compliance with expectations, takes advantage of others, is jealous and belittling of others, behaves in an arrogant or haughty manner, demands special treatment, has difficulty regulating emotions and behavior, is unable to cope with stress, adapt to change, or both, is sarcastic and bitter, avoids adult responsibilities by acting passive and helpless, intensely fears abandonment, has a pessimistic or negative view of life, has difficulty being alone, shows disregard for right and wrong, persistently lies or deceives to exploit others, is callous, cynical, and disrespectful of others, uses charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or personal pleasure, is extremely opinionated, has recurring problems with the law, including criminal behavior, repeatedly violates the rights of others through intimidation and dishonesty, lacks empathy for others or remorse for harming others, and lastly, fails to consider the negative consequences of behaviors or to learn from them. So those are cluster B, and then that is the narcissist as well. Now, not all of those will apply to the typical narcissistic behaviors. But if
Right.
we're dealing with that, this list is to be helpful to help people to kind of discern, am I really dealing with a toxic person?
Yes, right.
Or am I dealing with just typical arguments that two people will have? And is this something that we could work through?
Wow. There was a lot on that list.
Yeah,
So, it's kind of scary if the person that you're with, and you said there was about what, 25 of them on there
probably closer to 30.
or 30? So
Yeah.
the showing in the 20 anythings of that list, 20 plus, I would definitely safe to say that
Run,
there may be a
run.
problem. There may be a problem. So, like, what is some of the things that, like, the rash decision making? I want you to give an example, professional opinion on what a rash decision maker does in a relationship that's a narcissist that is like, wait a minute, this is something I really need to think about, because some people don't like to make decisions or they'd rather have someone else make the decisions. But what is a rash decision?
Maybe the narcissist is out and about. Now remember, a lot of outsiders haven't caught on that this person's a narcissist, and so maybe he's hanging out at a restaurant with a bunch of guys that he played golf with. One of the guys is somebody he's trying to impress, because it's
Right.
all about building the image. So now maybe the guy that he's talking to just bought himself a motorcycle. Hey, you want to come by my house and check it out? Sure, I'll go. I love motorcycles. He might never have even paid attention to motorcycles before, but because he wants to impress this person, because there's a secondary gain now for impressing this person.
Yes.
We got to use our imaginations. So he says, all right, come back to my house. Doesn't call his wife. So that in itself right there is a rash decision. Making the decision and not considering his spouse. Or it could be a woman even that's, let's go look at this new car that this friend of mine or this new friend of mine just bought. She's going to show me her new car, right? So they go to the other person's house. They want this person to like them too. So they are just like, wow, this is so fantastic. I've got to get this car. I've got to get this motorcycle. This is amazing.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you showed this to me. Thank you so much. And lies are also a part of this. I've been
Ah,
telling my wife I've been wanting to buy a new motorcycle. I've been telling my husband I need a new car. I think you've helped me pick the new car. A rash decision might be, I'm gonna go and sign for a new car, or I'm gonna order it the exact way I want it. I'm gonna
right.
go there and no conversations had with the spouse. And
Mm.
I come home and I have dealt with that with clients.
Wow. So that's something. And then what about the exaggerating achievements? That's the next one that I want to look at. It's
They like to lie and they like to talk themselves up. And oftentimes I will hear the spouse of a narcissist say to me, we were at this place and there were like people there that we were talking to. Maybe let's just say it's a high school reunion.
Mhm.
And I was listening to her talk about things that she's saying that she's done, and she's never done those things.
Wow.
Things that are like, make her sound like she's some like scientist or something. And
Right.
not what she's done. It's
Right. Like she just found the cure for cancer or something.
yeah.
Really being
Right,
very.
right. And so, or even, I've heard it from both sides because they lie to paint the image. They've got to
Right.
make a good image. So they're, whatever the image is in their mind, that would be a good image to have. That's what they want to sound like they do it. So
Wow.
people listening are be just like, wow, I can't believe and they love that. They love that response from a person that makes them feel good about themselves,
Mm.
wow, these people think I'm so great.
What about that lack of empathy? Because I really sometimes people can have something that they call dark humor. And I'm not a fan of it at all, to be honest with you. I just don't care for it. But there are some people that think that it's funny, to laugh or joke about the misfortunes of other people or maybe their situation or condition. Like, I had someone, that was a narcissist in my life. And, if they saw someone big, they'd be like, oh, there goes the water buffalo and say stuff like that. So, what would you, say, like things that, a person that's in a relationship with someone, like different things that they can see that, wow, they're lacking a lot of empathy there. Like, what's going on here?
Mhm. Yeah, empathy, grace, all kinds of things that they're lacking there. You really, I mean, there's no way to really address it with them unless you want to fight with them, because again, if you disagree with them about something or you point out a fault that they have, you are gonna deal with anger because they don't like being told that they're wrong about something.
Right.
Or they'll make you feel foolish for having an opinion. Oh, that's really mean. You shouldn't say that. How would you like it if somebody said stuff like that about you when you were, you say something like that, you know, they'll let
Right.
you they'll let you have it. It might not be a smack in the head, but they'll let you have it some way. So you don't want to say anything, but you also want to, if you're dating the person, good thing that you're dating them and not married to them, because now you have a choice to, try to make your distance.
Yeah, yeah, to kind of move on. And
Right.
one thing I've noticed with a lot of like narcissists or those toxic traits is that they don't have a lot of empathy, but then they expect empathy for their situation, or they'll have a sob story and they want the whole world to feel sorry for them and everyone should be like, oh, for them, or I
Yeah.
can't believe that happened to you. But
Right.
they don't have it in them to show it for other people.
Right. They have the victim mentality and then they don't have a empathetic heart for the people around them that are struggling, especially the ones that are struggling because of what they're doing, that they're creating. But even they're, I mean, I know some really great examples of that, but where people want to be the center of attention, they want it to all be about them, and they're not happy when their loved one is in a terminal state because everybody's coming to help
Mm,
that spouse and they're not happy that the attention is going to their spouse, not to them. And so
mm,
if the spouse passes away, they're actually happy because now everybody's feeling sorry for them that the person has passed, and they're sending the cards, and they're going to the celebrations of life or the funeral,
Right.
and they're there and they eat that up. That's what they're
Mhm.
looking for, attention. They're looking for the empathy to be for them. And then
Wow.
once that time is up, then you know they're going to have grief to a point, but they don't grieve the way that a lot of people grieve. It's their grief is for themselves, what they've lost.
Right, what they've lost. I don't have this person to, torment anymore. I
Yeah,
don't know
or
how
this person, right, or I don't have, this person did everything for me. This person made me, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and
cooked for
this
me.
person
Yeah,
took care
wash
of everything for
clothes.
me. Now I don't have anybody to do that for me, now it woe is me. And so meanwhile, they never lifted a finger to help that person. And
Right.
even when they were sick, and as a matter of fact, they just gave them a lot of grief when they were sick.
Oh yeah, probably the whole time. It was like,
Yeah,
oh, I have to do all of this for you, and probably made him feel bad about,
exactly, exactly.
me.
And they would rather go and cook their own meal for themselves, even though they're weak, because they're, that person is in a bad mood if they have to take care of, if they have to take care of somebody and it's not all about them, then they're in a bad mood because it's not about them, it's about taking care of someone else. So then that person that is with that person is now, sick and says, you know what? I'm gonna act strong because I don't need the bad mood. I'd rather just act strong.
Right. Wow. And that is so sad, especially if someone's terminal, that they would have to end their life in that kind of way. And we don't want that for anyone at all. So hopefully, you're getting a lot of value of what we're saying in our conversations. And then what about the persistent lies and deceit that you have to endure in these kind of relationships? You can be with a person and they portray themselves to be one thing. And I know that's something that I had to deal with someone, was that they portrayed themselves to be one way, but they conveniently omitted information. It was one of those things, like, had I had known that information, I would not have pursued and gone any farther. And then this is the response. Ah, well, what does that matter anyway? What does that matter? So, like, what do you speak to that for a person that literally blatantly lies? You catch them in it. I'm sitting here doing all types of research, catching in lie, and it's over a period of time I'm uncovering things. And then they're just like, well, what does it matter anyway? It doesn't matter. And I'm like, oh, it kind of does. Because if you have certain values, like, let's say if you're not the type of person that commits adultery, and you claim you're single and I'm single, and then I'm dating you, but you're actually still married and I'm not aware of that information, what is that? Because we have people that are in relationships with people that you may not know if what that person is presenting themselves as, it may not be the case
Right,
at all.
right. A lot of times that's the way that the narcissist has affairs. They'll present themselves as this victim in a very difficult marriage where the spouse, and that they're like on the verge of divorce, and or they're getting divorced, but they haven't separated yet because financially it's not doable. They'll make up excuses and lies just so
Right.
that they can get involved with the person. So the person innocently will be thinking, well, they've been like divorced and separated, but in the house together. That's a lot of times how it's presented. So
Yes.
if you get that story, run. If the person is still in the same house, just run. It's a lie.
I would even say, even if they're in a separate household, because a person can,
Right.
let's say if they're going through for whatever reason, they're not living in the same household anymore. There are people, just so our listeners, viewers just know this, there are married people that have a whole separate house, whole separate residence outside of their marriage that they can be living in and make it appear as if they are single.
Yeah.
So, it's almost like you have to do, like when you're looking for a job or a job is looking into you, you do your due diligence, you do your data gathering, you do your research, because there are situations where that could actually happen. So what are you thinking a person can do? Because you're thinking you're in a relationship and most people are going to be upfront honest about being in a relationship and sharing things, but there's this constant omission and withholding of information, and sometimes you don't find out about these things until years later.
Yeah, I would, say go slowly with a relationship that, it's important to go slowly with a relationship so that you are finding out this information early on. If this person's dishonest, that's gonna come up pretty early on in the relationship. You'll start to see the red flags early enough. But
Yes.
like we've said in previous ones, if you jump right into, you know, living together and you're just making trouble for yourself if you do that, because if it's a narcissist,
Mhm.
it show up soon enough. You don't need to move in with the person to find out certain things. They're gonna have friends. If they don't have any friends, then that's a warning sign too. But
Right.
if they have family members that they're talking to and they're close with, then okay, that's hopeful that so you get to know the person, see if the person gets along with their family of origin, and are they talking to them? Is there a problem with everybody? So it's like that kind of thing, because if they burn bridges behind them everywhere they go, you're gonna find out about it and you're gonna see it, and so let those be warnings to you.
Right. It's interesting. One of the things I think that you also mentioned was that rapidly shifting. Now, was it personalities or
Shifting emotions, displays rapidly shifting emotions.
yes, yeah,
Okay, and now we were talking about cluster B.
right.
So rapidly shifting emotions, that I believe they're talking more about the person that's histrionic.
Oh, okay.
They
Okay.
can go from sobbing to
Mhm.
cracking up and laughing, and but what's the goal with that? The goal with that is all eyes on me.
Right,
And
right,
so, it's, yeah, very, very strong emotions and loud, and, you know, a histrionic person is usually a person that will go into like let's say you're in a waiting room.
right.
They're the loud person that wants everyone to hear what they're saying. Um, Borderline is the person that's fighting with the people behind the desk. Narcissist is the person that's being controlling with the spouse and telling her where to sit and belittling her in front of people. So it's like the different personality disorders can come out in that kind of a tight area
Right,
where you're trying to all kind of like mind your own business and fill out
right.
forms and do stuff. They are usually the ones that stick out like a sore thumb. They definitely make it impossible to ignore them.
Oh wow, that is interesting because I think we all and put it in the chat if you've been in a situation like that where you've been in a waiting room or somewhere and you've actually maybe seen all three of those examples that you just mentioned or something similar. So that is amazing. And sometimes it's easier to see things in other people's relationships, but it's hard for us to see it in our own.
Right.
And I think, yeah, I think we need to close it out with that for sure.
Mhm.
What can a person do there? Because it's so easy to because we can see outward, we're looking at everything, but it's hard to see what's happening within us, within our own relationships. And, it's almost like, wow, why can't you see that? But
Right.
what can a person do to like take those blinders off
I
and truly
think,
acknowledge what's happening?
well, I think for one thing, a book like this that we were just talking about, that kind of helps people to gain self-awareness, and it slows you down enough and gets you out of your own situation enough so that you can kind of read and look at these different points and be like, oh yeah, this definitely happens to me, where I
Right.
put up with this, and these are the things that she does, or these are the things that he does. And so I think education, definitely, educate yourself about toxic relationships, narcissistic relationships, whatever. whatever it is you think you're dealing with. And, and listen to the other people in your life that love you. If other people in your life are telling you that they're concerned, that they see things that they are concerned about, listen to that and do some digging, try to find out. So what we're doing now by covering some different books in our podcast is so that you can find places to go to try to educate yourself enough to see, is this what I'm dealing with? Or is this just a typical relationship of two people that have differing opinions sometimes, and we can work through them because we both have some type of empathy for each other. We're able to see each other's side, even though we might not agree with what the other one is saying. We can see where they're coming from, and we can validate that. If those are things that are possible to do, then you probably have a healthy relationship. But if a lot of the things that we've talked about today are things that you're checking off the boxes, it's like
Right.
might be an issue.
Yes, and definitely. And if you're not a reader, hey, you know what? You have our podcast, Narcissist, I'm Asking for a Friend. You can always listen to our podcast. We're always going to share and bring the information because we want to keep you informed. We want to help you to get to a more emotional, healthy, stable place, and to, if you're having to deal with these relationships, whether it be with a spouse, partner, could be a family member. Let's not forget they're everywhere. You can have coworkers, neighbors. They're everywhere. So we want to keep you ahead of the game so you know what to expect and to keep your emotional health in a good place. So definitely make sure you like, share, subscribe. Always put your questions in the comments because we would love to answer them and maybe even do a show about it. And hey, if you ever wanted to be on the show, we'd love to have you as well. So yeah, definitely. My name is Tyler King. This is Karen Maldonado, and we are the Narcissist I'm Asking for a Friend podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show.